I'm doing photography for the last 7 years, and definitely I've taken a lot of photos like you people. But that is just one part. We take photos, we come home, we transfer the files. If we are paranoid, we take a backup as well. If we are more paranoid, we take backup of the backup. And if we are more paranoid, okay, hope you got the point. Then we start editing the images. And every photographer, every individual has some secrets that he or she uses when it comes to editing images. Even I have some of them, and I'm going to share them with you in this video. I'm going to use Photoshop and Lightroom. You might know some of this, but definitely you will learn something new. So without wasting any time, you know what I'm going to say. Let's get started. The first step is advanced masking in Lightroom. Now, there are a lot of advanced options in Photoshop for selecting and masking a particular area. But what if you're editing in Lightroom? Well, you don't get the same flexibility, but still there are some very good options in Lightroom for advanced selection. And today we are talking about range mask. Let's see how it works. For this image, I want to make certain adjustments to the sky. Maybe reduce the highlights and add a bit of clarity. Now, if I click on Show Selected Mask Overlay, you will see that even the tree is selected. And I don't want the effect to be on the tree. You can use a brush and manually get rid of it, but the better option is to turn on the range mask and use the luminance option. The reason for using the luminance option is the tree and the sky are different in terms of luminance, meaning brightness. I'll turn on the luminance mask so I get the grayscale version and start making my adjustments. The reason why everything is selected is because the range is from 0 to 100. I'm going to move the range towards the right to select the brighter part. If you want to select the darker part, just move the range towards the left side. Once you're happy with the selection, use smoothness to add a bit of feathering between the selected and unselected parts. Now whatever adjustments you will make will only get affected to the mask you have created. The next option in range mask is color. For that, let's go to the next tip, and that is skin softening in Lightroom. Now, there are a lot of advanced techniques in Photoshop for skin retouching, and this isn't one of them. But again, if you're editing in Lightroom and you want a quick way, this is the technique for you. The idea is to select the face with the radial filter and then use the range mask to select the skin. Now, rather than luminance, I will use color and select the color of the skin with the picker option to make a selection. Now, since the color of the skin is not even, you can drag and select range of colors. If you want to add some other selection, you can hold shift and click on the other color as well. Once you're happy with the overall selection, you can change the amount. Use negative texture, but don't overdo it, and you're good to go. You can add a bit of sharpening if you like, but that's it. You can use the brush tool to add or remove certain areas as well, and this is the before and after. Again, as I said, this is not the best way for skin retouching. If you have time, go ahead and practice the advanced techniques, they are much better. But if you want to do something very quick, I feel this is a very good option. The next tip is adding contrast in Photoshop with the help of a black and white layer. Again, there are a lot of ways to add contrast to your images. Tone curves is one of my favorite. But once I finish editing the image, sometimes I want to add just a tad bit of contrast, and that is when I use this particular technique. Just create a black and white layer on top of the image and change the blending mode to soft light. Change the opacity of the layer depending on how strong you want the effect to be. I would recommend just about 10 to 20, but again that depends on your image. You can also play with the color sliders to adjust the contrast of a particular color, and this is my favorite option. This is a very quick way to add contrast, but I think it's super effective. The next tip is how to save your images for web. I get this question a lot. You edit your images on your machine and it looks great. But once you upload it on the internet, the quality is not the same. The reason why this happens is because of the compression. Now for example, if you're uploading a photo on Instagram will apply a general compression algorithm on that image, and then the image gets uploaded on Instagram, and that is where the quality is affected. Now if you don't want the quality to get affected, the simple solution is to avoid the compression. And how to do it? Manually compress the image. In Photoshop, when you're making adjustments, make sure the color profile is sRGB because that is what the internet uses. I'll talk more about it in a bit. Resize the picture. I would recommend to use 1080 as the width and make sure the link is on so that the height gets adjusted automatically. And then save it for web. Even while exporting, make sure convert to sRGB color space is selected. The final result will be lesser in size, but since you have manually compressed the image, Instagram is not going to compress the image and the quality is not going to degrade. There you have it. You're welcome. Before we go to the next tip, it's time to give a shout out to the sponsors of the video, and that is Skillshare. Now Skillshare is something that I use on a regular basis. It's an online learning community with a lot of courses, and when I say a lot, I actually mean it. You want to learn photography, filmmaking, designing and a lot of things? Skillshare has several courses for every category. I myself was not thorough with Photoshop and wanted to upgrade my skills. So I joined this class by Daniel Scott where he covers a lot of advanced techniques of Photoshop I did not know before. It really helped me to improve my overall editing workflow. So if you want to upgrade your skills, I would definitely recommend to use Skillshare. The link is in the description below. For a limited time, if you go to the link, you will get 2 months of free Skillshare premium subscription and you get access to all the classes. Now, if you take a yearly subscription, you are actually only paying less than $10 a month. That is less than 800 Indian rupees. And again, you're getting access to all the classes. I think it's totally worth it. Again, the link is in the description. Moving to the next tip, and that is selective sharpening in Photoshop. My favorite way to sharpen an image is to use a high pass filter in Photoshop. Just use a high pass filter on the image. Talking about the value, increase it till a point where you start seeing some details in the edges. Again, don't overdo it because you want it to look sharp but not fake. Then you can use the layer mask and apply the sharpening exactly where you want it to. If you're going to upload the image on the web, as I said, resize the image. Now, if you have applied a high pass filter on the higher resolution image, I would recommend to delete it, resize it, and then apply a high pass filter with a lower value. Basically, lower the resolution, lower should be the value for the high pass filter. Use this particular technique at the end of your edit. It's a super way to add that delicious sharpness and make your images look crispy AF. The next tip is on how to clean the dust spots in your image. Now, doesn't matter what camera you're using, if you're changing lenses, there will be dust spots on the sensor. Definitely get it clean when possible, but if you have some images with dust spots on it, this is how to clean it. Use the spot removal tool in Lightroom, and before you start cleaning the dust spots, click on Visualize Spots and the image will look like this. If you can't see the dust spots clearly, just move the slider till a point where you start seeing them. Now just click on the spot and Lightroom will replace it with a nearby area. It actually does a pretty good job most of the times, but if you're not happy, you can manually move it and you're done. The reason I use this particular technique is sometimes the dust spots are not easily visible, and after you finish editing the image, then you realize then you have to edit that image again. So to avoid that, use this particular technique. The next tip is on recovering shadows. A lot of the times when the picture is a lot underexposed, even plus 100 shadows is not enough. In such situations, I bump up the exposure till I get to see a bit of the shadows. Now, when you increase the exposure, the highlights are also getting affected. So I reduce the highlights a bit to compensate for it. Then I increase the shadows till a point where it looks natural. If you increase the shadows a lot, the picture looks a bit fake. And I've seen a lot of over-processed photos on Instagram. And if you want to avoid that, make sure you bump up the exposure first and then adjust the shadows and highlights. The next tip is making your own presets for a faster workflow. When you take a lot of images in similar conditions, the base edit is almost the same with minor adjustments here and there. Instead of making those adjustments separately for each and every image, you can create a preset and save a lot of time. Once you're done with the base edit, just go to the presets tab, click on the plus icon and create preset. You can make several groups as well for your presets. Maybe you own multiple cameras, a GoPro, a DSLR, a drone, make several groups for that. Instead of selecting all the adjustments, just select the adjustments you want the preset to have. Make multiple presets for different scenarios and later you can use any one of them and start editing on top of it. This makes sure that you have maintained your signature style since you have created the preset, but at the same time you save a lot of time as well. The next step is about color spaces. As I said at the starting of the video, if you're editing for web, use sRGB. But if you're not, I would not recommend to use sRGB. I would recommend either Adobe RGB or ProPhoto RGB. The reason for that is Adobe RGB and ProPhoto RGB are bigger color spaces compared to sRGB. Now, why does it matter? If you're dealing with 16-bit images with a lot of details in colors, especially saturated colors, you need a bigger color space because you need all those information. And that is the reason sRGB is not always recommended. I use ProPhoto RGB for editing my images because that is the largest color space among these three. If you're going to print your photos, I would not recommend to use sRGB. If you're a professional photographer, you should take this seriously. The next step is seeing the images and editing on multiple devices. A lot of the times you will face this issue. You're editing on your primary machine and it looks great. But once you transfer it to some other device, again the image looks different. There can be a lot of reasons. One is your main display is not color calibrated. Second, the secondary display can be different. Like for example, a lot of the smartphones have a tendency to oversaturate the colors. So even if the saturation was proper, just because the display has the tendency to oversaturate the colors, the image might look oversaturated. The ideal solution is to color calibrate all the displays. But if that is not possible, then what I would recommend is transfer the image on the secondary device and edit the image on the secondary device itself so that if you're making any adjustments, you're going to see the live preview of it. Also make sure what color space the device is using. If you're editing in Adobe RGB or ProPhoto RGB and the secondary device is using sRGB, converting in sRGB will be a better option. That's it from the video guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comment below which was your favorite tip. If you liked the video, please press the like button. If you're new to the channel, press the subscribe button for more such quality content. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.